In this video, experts from Little Beaver, the premier manufacturer of earth drills and augers, take an in-depth look at replacing the transmission, oil bath, or gearbox. We'll start by removing the flex shaft. Put a pipe wrench on the coupling to hold it in position while placing another pipe wrench on the flex shaft to loosen it. Then unscrew the flex shaft by turning it counterclockwise and keeping the coupling in place. To remove the cover plate, use an impact wrench to loosen the bolts. Remove the bolts to the cover plate and the vent plug deflector, then remove the deflector. Lightly hammer the cover plate to loosen it. Then use 2 pry bars to lift the cover plate off. Properly dispose of the oil. To remove the coupling, loosen the set screw with an Allen T-bar wrench. Use a pipe wrench to break the coupling loose. Then remove it by hand. Next, we'll remove the adapter. Loosen the set screw with an Allen T-bar wrench. Remove the bolt inside the adapter using an impact wrench. Then use 2 pry bars under the adapter to pry it up, or use a ball joint remover. Place it under the adapter. Lightly hammer the ball joint remover until the adapter comes out. Once the lid, adapter, and coupling are removed, take the pinion shaft out. Place a punch on the shoulder of the pinion shaft and gently knock it out with a hammer. To remove the main shaft, lightly tap the bottom of it on a hard surface until it's free. To remove the rear pinion shaft bearing, use a 1/2-inch rod or something similar. Line it up and weld it on so it's possible to get the bearing out. Now assemble the new gears for the transmission. Place the key into the main shaft. Use a hammer to set it in, leaving the key angled toward the top. Do the same on the opposite side. Place the main shaft into the bronze gear. Position the bronze gear on the press so you can push the main shaft through it. Use the press to make sure the main shaft is seated all the way through the bronze gear. Place the pinion gear shaft into the front pinion bearing. Again, position the bearing on the press so you can push the pinion gear shaft through it. Press the pinion gear shaft through the front pinion bearing. Press the upper main shaft bearing into the cover plate. Make sure the bearing is seated all the way into the plate. Next, install the 2 main shaft seals into the bottom of the transmission housing. Press 1 seal at a time and apply even pressure. If you don't have a press, use a socket that is close to the diameter of the seal. Tap it in with a hammer and make sure it's seated all the way. When pressing the second seal, use the same method. Don't press too hard because the seals will bend. Secure the snap ring in the bottom of the housing. Turn the transmission over to access the inside. Press the lower main shaft bearing in. Make sure it's seated all the way down. Next, position the rear pinion shaft bearing on the transmission. Place a socket that is close to the diameter of the bearing on top of the bearing and use a press or hammer to make sure it's fully seated. To install the main shaft and bronze gear, position the transmission on the press so the main shaft can be pressed through the lower main shaft bearing. Then add a little bit of grease to the main shaft right above the keyway. Place the main shaft into the lower main shaft bearing. Use a press or tap on top of the bronze gear. Then press or tap the main shaft through the lower main shaft bearing. Make sure it's seated all the way. Next, install the pinion gear shaft. Place the pinion gear shaft into the rear pinion shaft bearing. Line up the grooves with the bronze gear. Press the pinion gear shaft until it's fully seated in the bearing. Then place the main shaft spacer on top of the bronze gear. Next, insert the coupling while it's detached from the flex shaft. If the flex shaft came out with the coupling attached, remove the coupling. Using pipe wrenches, place one wrench on the coupling and the other on the flex shaft. Hold the wrench on the coupling in place while breaking the flex shaft loose. Then unscrew the coupling from the flex shaft. To put the coupling back on the transmission, line up the threads and start to tighten by hand. Insert the pipe plug with Teflon tape on it. Be careful not to cross thread. Using an impact wrench, tighten the coupling and the pipe plug. Finally, tighten both the coupling and pipe plug with a pipe wrench so they're seated all the way. Insert the set screw and use an Allen T-bar wrench to tighten it. Put the O-ring cover seal on the transmission and make sure it's seated around all of the bolt holes. Now it's ready for oil. Fill the transmission to the bottom of the drain plug. When you're finished, attach the cover plate. Make sure to get the bearing over the main shaft. It should be fairly easy at first, then tap it down with a rubber mallet until it seats in place. Next, insert the dowel pins. Line them up and tap them in with a hammer. Place the vent plug deflector on the cover plate and insert the bolts. Start threading by hand to make sure they don't cross thread. Then, using an impact wrench, tighten the bolts down in a cross pattern. To install the adapter, turn the transmission over and coat the main shaft with an anti-seize compound. Place the flat washer inside the adapter. Insert the key on the main shaft and lightly tap it in with a hammer. Line the adapter up on the main shaft. Insert the bolt with the lock plug and two Belleville washers. Lightly tighten the bolt. Use a rubber mallet to pound the adapter down the shaft and tighten the bolt with an impact wrench. Finally, insert and tighten the set screw with an Allen T-bar wrench. The last step is to reinstall the flex shaft into the coupling. Line up the flex shaft with the coupling. Tighten the flex shaft by hand, making sure you don't cross thread. Then, tighten once more with a pipe wrench. For more information or questions about your Little Beaver earth drill, or to check out additional service videos, visit www.littlebeaver.com.